Hello, welcome to this video where today I'm going to be talking about spiritual divination and how to care for your tarot deck or oracle card deck. Um, Both of these decks, while they're different to interact with, and a lot of times the readings can be very different depending on which deck you're using, in my opinion, the care, the maintenance, the emotional and energetic work that goes into divination, cardology, cardomancy, whatever you choose to call it, um, is the same pretty much, in my opinion, obviously, for either tarot or oracle. And so I'm going to kind of just give a broad um, foundation for getting to know your deck and learning them, learning the cards, how to read them, how to listen to them, and also learning what your intention is going to be when you choose to work with with your deck. Because when you're talking about spiritual divination versus just plain old tarot reading, in it becomes a bit more clear about what you're using your deck for, because in itself you're approaching it from a spiritual point of view, which means that you're using it as a tool to seek higher knowledge, guidance, clarity for the purpose of self-growth, or for the purpose of making more informed choices or interacting with your world in a more beneficial way, versus reaching out to tarot looking for exact direct answers about others, having specific questions regarding intentions of others, or regarding specific future events. So when I'm talking about spiritual divination, I'm kind of ignoring that version and that perspective on tarot reading, just because I feel like it comes from completely separate uses, right? Polarities. So personally, for me, I resonate more with using it for a reason that has a strong purpose to it. So with that said, I would say that the firm foundation that you want to try to build with your cards when you first get them is one of communion and a common ground. Kind of like you would go into a friendship with somebody who you really like and you want to be best friends with. You know, you listen to them, you really enjoy what they have to say, you're hearing their point of view or the words that they're using with fresh ears, with curiosity, and that really sets a different tone than when you're looking for the quickest route or the most obvious answer just to get it and move on. So when you first get a tarot deck, even if you're familiar with the setup of tarot, it's important to allow that deck to have a personality and speak for itself. So it's, for me, when I first get a deck, I'll spend time going through that brand new deck. As soon as I open it, I will look at every card, really go through and look at every single one and let it spark whatever kind of meaning, whatever kind of essence that it does to me. And I kind of make a mental note of it and go through the deck, shuffle them, get a feel for how they feel, and try to be as fluid and as open as I can, as receptive as I can while I'm doing this. Really not try to overlay my previous opinion or my belief of what this card means. Another thing that I really don't like to do either is to jump into a picture too much. because especially with classic tarot, like the Rider-Waite deck or even, my Aquarian deck that I use, sometimes the pictures are a bit dramatic. They're kind of more mainstreamy, and they push real triggering kind of feelings sometimes, certain cards. And also, sometimes the meaning isn't always what the meaning's more subtle. The message of what the cards is trying to portray could be deeper or more subtle than the picture on the front of the card. And so it can be really easy to try to jump through a quick reading and grasp that picture meaning, that face value meaning, and not actually allow the card to speak for itself, based on what cards are before and after it, based on the entire flow of the spread, based on the person you're reading. All of these things actually really come into play when you're reading a card in a reading. And so when you're flipping through an initial deck, when you first get them, of course you're not really going to take that kind of stuff into consideration because you're just learning, you're just getting to know what the deck is. All these things, they come with time, and this is another important thing that I wrote on my notes here, which is that you allow card meanings to develop for you. You develop a language with your deck that gives intricate new differences in the meaning for the card as you get to learn your deck and learn how they use that word or how they use the card as a word. So it can be very helpful for some people to go straight by the book, the leaflet that comes with the deck, or the traditional meanings for each card. It can be helpful for people to just stick by that, and some readers do. Some readers really just go by the book, and that's okay. For however you're feeling that is your style, is your style. So you can go for that, but never feel like you have to be trapped in traditional meanings or that you have to stick by the book, even especially for oracle cards, right? A lot of oracle cards, they come with a special book that gives you card meanings because usually they're not set up like a traditional tarot deck, so the meanings aren't kind of like passed down verbally over working time, and they haven't just come to be like traditional tarot has. They come with a book, and sometimes people will really stick to that book, and they will only pull the meaning of what the book has for the upright or the reversed, and that's fine. Some people go by the pictures, some people go by the feeling that they get at that deck, or the intuitive insight that's coming through as soon as they see that card. So never feel trapped or bogged down with divination. It's so personal, and that's why I really enjoy and could never get tired of tarot, because it is so unique. Every reading is so different. It's very much like having just all the letters of the alphabet and being able to mix them, and how many words, how many stories can you really make out of that, right? Every time you put a letter in a different way, it's making a new word. And tarot cards and readings are very much like that. So it's fun. It can be overwhelming if that's not your approach. And like I said, you can totally go by the books. Or like my personal style was to learn both ways, to stick by the book for a little while and then to start to open up and allow my intuition and my connection to start building a deeper meaning. Specifically for, say, my fairy ring book and deck, I, for a very long time, spent so much time reading the meanings behind the books. And also, I really love that deck because every fairy, every legend, every elemental has a historical, ancestral myth sort of behind it. And that book includes them. And so not only does it have an oracle guidance message that comes along with the card from the fairies, but there's also the whole historical background of where that fairy entity, that elemental came from, what they do, their personal energy, and how they came to be and how they interact with, you know, the organic matrix and the regular matrix. And so with that deck, it's infinite, the knowledge that you can pull from every time you do a reading. And over the years, and I've had that deck for, oh my gosh, almost 20 years. So I've really been able to let it percolate and marinate and work really well now for me, because I can dive very deeply into the cards and see, based on how the spread is, based on the person I'm reading and the situation, you know, is the deck speaking about a card meaning here? Are they asking me to pull a relevant, a relevant fable from that elemental, you know? Because so many of the fairies and the elementals, they have wonderful morals that go along with their energy. And sometimes I feel like the cards just want the person to know that moral or hear that story. So oracle decks can be very unique in that way as well. And yeah, that's what I guess I will say. Take your time, get to build a real firm foundation with your deck in whichever way feels comfortable with you before you start actually, you know, doing readings. And all the while, too, never feel like you have to do X amount of studying or know every card in such a way before you could actually do a reading. There's nothing wrong with learning while you're reading. You know, you learn as you're teaching. I really love to look at learn teaching as a cycle, because it's such an exchange of information that's always taking place, right? Just like speaking, communicating with others is a teach-learning process in itself, because we're exchanging information while we're speaking, right? So there's an opportunity to learn new, and there's also an opportunity to teach what you know. And the deck and the interaction of a spread and a reading is really like a communion and a conversation. And that's another level to it, but this is why I personally approach it with, you know, spiritual divination, because it sets the table very nicely for my personal approach. The second important foundational setting to have for spiritual divination is to know what you're going into your work with. What kind of use you're going to use your deck with. What's your intentions? Are you going to use it to read for others, or is this a personal deck? Is it something you're going to use as a business to try to use energetic exchanges with? Or is this something that you're going to use as a control mechanism to gain superiority, have a authoritative step over others, and to feel like you're controlling outcomes? Because lots of tarot readers do come from that aspect of more of a control and more of an egotistical point of view. So it's important to know yourself and to know what intentions that you're coming at your deck with. And once you have that energetic boundary of your own to say, okay, I'm coming from a spiritual angle, I'm looking for higher guidance, I'm attempting to create a space of communion, of a common ground of service to others, and approaching things, asking for what's coming is of my highest good. What I'm going to be looking and asking for are beneficial to me and to others. You know, that's how I personally set up my space to do readings. And anytime that I'm going to pull out my deck, I really make that energetic commitment and that alignment first and foremost. Just to keep it real with my deck, because like I said in my very first video about tarot, they have a personality, they have an energy, they are an entity of themselves, and so it's important to approach them and look for consent in readings, and to understand that They have their own personality and perspective, and that's really why you should be choosing a deck, especially if you have multiple decks and you've gotten to know them. Then you can really choose appropriately which personality or filter you want to provide for specific readings. Because certain decks will resonate with others in a better way than other decks. Yeah, I guess I would just finally touch on understanding what the intention really is when you are promoting readings or reaching out to others, or say if others come to you asking you for a reading, to really have an intention to set a ground level of common energy. So if you are a person who enjoys to do quick readings, really shallow face level, quick questions, quick answers, get it out there. If that's how you feel you align in your service, then by all means go right ahead. But make sure that those who are coming to you for a reading are going to be looking for those really quick answers. They're going to have very direct questions. And be on that same vibe as you. And same thing with like if you have a more spiritual approach like me. I always make sure others understand me and know what type of reading I'm going to be providing before we start, and that they understand and they're on the same level, because if they're very stuck on that materialistic level, I understand that they're not going to grasp that deeper communion of energetic exchange and advice that can really happen with appropriate use of divination. Because in my workings and my knowledge, it's mostly seeds of guidance and esoteric knowledge, personal insights that spark these little meanings for us so individually. They resonate very deeply, and they take a while to bubble up and to come to true fruition about what the deepest meaning is of them. It's really knowledge you're supposed to want to work on. You're supposed to want to remember, and a month later come back to, 2 months later review, maybe they're pointing out things that are coming 6 months down the line, or a year down the line, or in 20 years. Cards speak to a resonance beyond time and beyond especially what we see here in our regular world as time. And if you are away from that view, if you can't even understand that concept, then you are going to miss a lot of those nuggets of truth that tarot can offer to you, or that an oracle deck can offer to you, because they're best used over time, like a wine. It appreciates over time. Wisdom and guidance do the same. They mature over time, they get deeper, they get more intricate. And if you don't have that capacity for reflection, then it's almost like everybody's wasted their time, sort of, in doing an in-depth reading. And that spirit and the cards have done. I hate to even say that they waste their time, because I really feel like everything happens for a reason. So even in spaces where maybe their messages are going over the top, or they're not coming through, I do believe that perhaps at a later time at the right divine timing, those things will trickle in. Because anyone who gets a reading, anytime Spirit is trying to speak through, whether it's through cards or messages or anywhere, you know, the universe is going to get you your message one way or another. It's always happening. It's always seeking. And even those who don't have ears to hear, that is still playing, and eventually it will resonate at some point. So yeah, that would be, I guess, what I'm going to cover for this video, just as a beginner's approaching to spiritual divination, setting up a foundation for yourself. Keep those two things in mind. Take time to get to know and build a real relationship with your cards. Allow them to speak. Allow each card to have a story of its own and tell that story. Take some time when you're not doing readings and you're not actually asking them any questions, to just look them over and appreciate them. Appreciate the picture on the card. Maybe make your own notes about them. I have books that I've written over the years of meanings of my own decks, you know, or little notes that they spark up, or a time that something new comes in to me during a reading and a whole new click of the cards, a whole new meaning, you know, I've made a new word. I keep notes of those, so maybe that'll be helpful to you. For my oracle decks, sometimes I do doodles for each card, a meaning for a doodle, or I draw my own version of that card. I draw my own versions of my fairies a lot to get to know them better. So if you're a creative person like that, maybe you have an outlet like that, or maybe if you're a painter, music, whatever, you know, your own flavor is, you can put that flavor into learning and into enjoying working with your cards, so that everybody enjoys it more, and also like your cards get to know you better through that. One final thing I didn't mention is, if you do have a new deck and you're looking to build a great relationship with them, keep them in your bedroom so they can learn you. Put them near your bed, underneath your bed, by your bedside table, somewhere that's special to you. Wrap them in something special to you, and they'll absorb your energy, and they'll hear you, and they're listening to you all the time. I do think that. And so by keeping them in a room where you spend a lot of time, it can really help build that relationship too. And then, yeah, just be careful that you align your intentions when you're going into doing actual readings and actual communion with your deck, that you are aligning your vibration, you're setting your tone, and that you're doing that internal work to actually ask yourself, why do I use cards? What is my intention with readings? What am I looking for as being a reading, or when I'm coming into asking tarot questions? Why and what am I asking for? Defining that intention within yourself is just so important. I mean, whatever you're choosing to do in all of life, knowing your polarity, where your alignment follows, where you're comfortable in your orientation of service, whether you're focused on yourself or others. There is no right or wrong. There's no judgment. But in an understanding that you're more comfortable and your mind works in this way. And then you can approach divination in that way as well. So I hope everyone has found this enlightening. I hope maybe you'll take some of these thoughts into account when you're working with your own deck. If you have things that you do with your deck, I'd love to hear about them. So leave a comment. If you have any questions, definitely leave those below as well. Yeah, and I plan to do a next video specifically on some card meanings, how to learn card meanings of traditional tarot. So I hope that you'll check that one out as well. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.